changes to section 106 of the Town and Country Planning Act agreement. Report of the Director Regeneration and Public Protection attached on page 18. Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Chair. Changes to the 106 agreement. Recent changes to community infrastructure legislation also affect the use of section 106 agreements. This comes into force on April the 1st this year. The Council existing policy on 106 agreements will therefore be out of date and a new one required. Section 4 sets out the changes in detail, but in summary they are: 1. Contributions based on tariffs per dwelling will not be allowed. 2. Contributions to a geologic type-like community facility will not be allowed. We will have to be much more specific. 3. There will be restrictions on being allowed to pull contributions. 4. Monies cannot be collected for a central pot. 5. Contributions can only be requested for development of 10 dwellings or more. In order that 106 agreement can still be used as mitigated against development and a new policy is required, there is attached Appendix A. Further work on detailed projects is required, as set out in 4.5, and it is proposed that these are agreed by the Head of Development Control in consultation with the Cabinet Member of Planning and Development. And all this will be Council policy. It needs to be approved at full Council, so the recommendations are as set out in section 1.
Councillor Kondaka.
Thank you, Chair. We've got this situation because we don't have a borough plan and we can't yet charge community infrastructure levy. Basically, this is a bridging agreement on these section 106 charges to actually bind us over for a considerable time it could be before we ever get a borough plan and ever get a community infrastructure levy. Without this, we'll be in an even worse position, so I am actually in favour of us having this interim policy, but it does show how weak the borough is and how we're chucking away millions of pounds of potential infrastructure money because we can't get a pot of money per development. As it said at the beginning here, we can't charge per house. Rugby, head of a borough plan, community infrastructure levy coming on board, they can charge each house built so much money to get infrastructure. Because we've fouled up, argue, have an incompetent working party, we are in a right mess, and this is what results. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions to Councillor Kondaka? No, thank you very much.
Well said.
Well said. Councillor.
Let us make it clear again. The changes of 106 has been done to the government in what they're doing. Because it's changed its policy of how you can claim from contractors the money in what is called SIL. And that SIL is the infrastructure money you can get for schools, libraries, dentists and all that. That SIL is now what you can ask a contractor for as a planning authority. You cannot ask for the same with 106. You can ask for 106 and the government have changed the rules. Nothing, see, borough plan, crazy for borough plan. It's nothing to do with that at all. It's the changing of how the government and how it is still and how we can deal with contractors within the framework of planning. And as I say, you can get 106, you can run them together with SIL, but if the main infrastructure is called SIL, where you ask for it. But the 106 is now very specific. You cannot have it in a pot and say, well, we'll build so stuff down there and there. You have to now tell the world that, yes, we are going to build that, let's say, play area. And that is what the money has to be spent for. You can't now have a pot and spread it round and do what on the environment as we do now. It is totally different. But because of the way it comes in, the new system comes in, and what you can ask for the contractors and what they can do, is the reason for it. It has been changed by the law. It has been changed how the planning operates, and I don't mind. I've been in this game a long time, Chair, and I don't mind people keep having a go and do about various. But when you're going to sit in that chair, please tell the people the truth and what it is and what it means, because it is not the borough plan. It's what the government is laid down with, must be done with its contractors, and this planning must be done. And to telling them it's that all the time is totally and utterly wrong. I don't mind you going for election, but don't mislead people.
Are you moving the report?
I certainly am moving the
Is
report.
that second?
We don't have a
Yeah.
choice, it's government.
Any other? All those in favour of the recommendation? Thank you very much. Warwickshire Health and Wellbeing Strategy, page 36, which I think is you, Councillor Phillips, am I right?
It is, yes.
You're taking us through this, yeah?
Yeah.
I didn't realise that.
Oh, didn't you?
Yeah, you did tell me that. Thank you, Chair. This is a proposal to accept the priorities of the Warwickshire Health and Wellbeing strategy that has to be in place in order that we incorporate the principles of that into our own priorities and approaches. The recommendation, Section 3 gives the background and highlights that the Health and Wellbeing Board is fairly new in terms of the changes that happened with public health moving over to the county council, and the requirement for the Director of Public Health to produce an annual report which is based on that strategy. Excuse me. So the recommendations that are before you today are that the Council does adopt and include the health and wellbeing strategy within its policy framework, and that we continue with our Corporate Health Champions group, which contributes towards the delivery of that strategy, more specifically at a local level.
Yeah, there isn't that much to add other than the fact that this has been a worker cooperation. There might be people out there that don't know, with the care commissioning groups, been 3 in Warwickshire have been involved in this. Public Health Warwickshire have been involved in this. 5 district councils have been involved in this. Health Watch, volunteer groups have been involved in this, and it all was based on what they would call the joint strategic needs assessment, you know, whereby each area, like the CCGs, have delved down into the health of each district, right, and also looked at how that combined across Warwickshire, along with public health, to deliver a strategy that will, in theory, because all strategies are theories, deliver better health across Warwickshire. However, underneath that, because it is only a top level strategy, underneath that, the Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council work on a partnership level with North Warwickshire Council and North Warwickshire Care Commissioning Group, and representatives of both councils and the care commissioning groups, to look at the health in particular of the north of the county. You know, so we have funds available there, but the strategy is the overarching starting point, and then beneath that we have our health and wellbeing boards for the north, and beneath that we have, therefore, in the Nuneaton, for example, we have health champions in every department within the borough, within the council, should I say, who look at their delivery, be it housing officers, be it sports development officers, be it community officers, and how what we do feeds into and up to that, you know. So there is a lot of, you know, working together and partnerships, and at the end of each year, Public Health Warwickshire have to deliver a report, and then we can take a look at that and the outcomes of the work that's been put forward. Okay, so I will endorse, I propose the recommendation to accept the strategy.
Just a minute, I haven't got the speakers yet. Councillor Conductor.
Oh,
Thank you, Chair. Health stuff is one of the areas the council does actually do quite well. It's the heart town, etc. There's a lot of need in this town. I mean, if I was my father, I'd have about 6 years to live. So it's very important that we all live better than our generation before us and live healthier lives. One thing that does worry me when we have this reducing health inequalities agenda, though, is we actually start having a postcode lottery. And these 5 wards are deprived, that people die early in them. And we must make sure that we don't actually lose opportunities. It's like things like measured miles there's quite a lot of really good stuff we do. But if we're not careful, we actually then have an inverse inequality for people in some wards because they contain lots of healthy people and some not healthy people. So I do hope we're being very careful that we're not losing opportunities, particularly in Wellington where there's quite a lot of space for measured miles and so, to actually not exclude things happening there, because people do travel between wards for recreation. And particularly we came up with a hockey thing the other week, well actually about 2 months ago. Everyone in the Neaton doesn't have an all-weather hockey pitch, the one happens to be Eton. So if we're too prescriptive over reducing health inequalities, we don't actually understand that some facilities for health are actually borough-wide.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
See you later.
Mrs. Conductor.
Thank you. I didn't actually know what Keith was going to say, so he's covered one bit that I was going to say. So it's just really just a little request, to be honest. The recommendation and that the Council's Corporate Health Champions Group continues to contribute towards the delivery of the strategy. Now, this is the first time I'd heard of looking at this morning. The first time I'd heard of it, so I thought, don't know what that is. So I put Corporate Health Champions Group in the search on the council website and came up with nothing.
oh right.
So it's really just, you've explained it a little bit there, Councillor Phillips, but it'd be really nice if there was something on the website as to who it was, what they were doing, and just a little line so that those of us who have got quite an interest in health and well-being issues, I have worked in the NHS for 24 years, that we actually can see what's going on and know if there's anything that we could actually contribute and who we could speak to and what have you. So it's just a little bit more transparency and openness, please. Yeah. Otherwise, I think it's great.
I think it's good, just for you. Health champions.
Anyone from there? Are you going to move this?
I'll move the recommendation.
Are you all happy with this? Thank you very much. Thank you, John. Item 9, timetable of meetings. There's been quite a lot of discussion regarding the timetable of meetings and trying to perhaps take out some of the problems that have occurred in previous years, but trying to also, we've got a legal pattern to follow in some things. We have to deal with planning applications within a certain amount of time and so on. So there are some constraints regarding the timetable, but this has been put together looking at those matters and also looking at the dates, for instance, when we have to legally set the council tax, because we have to do that before the end of February, and various other matters such as that, so that things like the audit committee are being put into feed into cabinet and council deadlines according to what they are. Councillor Condoc wants to speak about this, as does Councillor Wilson.
I'll be quick, just a couple simple points. Planning applications is always a compromise between having them every 4 weeks or every 3 weeks. But you always get a very dud meeting after a bank holiday, and we end up having a planning meeting like this calendar's 5th of January planning meeting just after Christmas. when the 15th of December was the one before Christmas. There's actually going to be virtually nothing at that meeting because the officers have had most of those 2 weeks off. And similarly other bank holidays. So I do hope we can sort of not necessarily change the every 3 weeks, but when the planning meetings cross a bank holiday, particularly a significant one like Christmas, we make the gaps more than 3 weeks so we don't have a silly meeting with only one application. Because it is 17 meetings a year, the planning committee, so yeah, if we can respace it to 16 and take out a bit of the dud ones that have got nothing on the agenda, that would be useful. The second thing is all the scrutiny meetings meet at 5 o'clock. One of the members of my group find it very difficult because they work to meet at 5. So it would be useful to actually spread them out. We used to have one at 5, one at 5:30, one at 6. And I understand the issue of officers' time, but yeah, it's also councillors' time. Some councillors, unlike me, have a proper job, so yeah, it's useful that not every meeting starts at 5. Thank you, Chair.
Just a couple of questions. Could you give me a list of all these? Most of our officers have 2 weeks off at Christmas, because I'd be very interested to see that list, because I cannot think who it was that I saw on Christmas Eve and just after New Year, within that 2 week gap. If they weren't actually employees, they should have been not allowed in the building. But you obviously know something I don't, Councillor, so I'll be happy if you give me a list of these people. And secondly, I understood that the OSPs actually voted some time ago on what time their meetings were. You were there, presumably.
I think the OSP voted independently on their times.
And is that not democratic? Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. As one of the councillors, other councillors who do work full-time, I also appreciate the difficulties in trying to make some council meetings. I would take issue with one assertion in the report. I mean, I stand prepared to be corrected, but I checked with the other members of my group. I'm not sure about the alternative group, but I have received no formal request for consultation about the dates. It says that members were consulted. I don't remember seeing an email coming out. I stand prepared to be corrected, but I don't remember seeing anything coming out. But my main issue, and I have raised it before, but unfortunately it was missed, I would ask the Cabinet to consider it going forward for future years, is that, as you've already said, Councillor Harvey, there is a legal pattern throughout the course of the municipal year. Therefore, it is not beyond the wit of man to anticipate the year ahead, because we set this in the February. By the time we get to, say, November, December, January, those of us who do work full-time and work in busy offices where leave is at a premium, we have to start looking at the future years. And so I'm not saying to set it in stone, but to say we are provisionally allocating, say if we were doing it this year, 2016-17's year, because we know when the elections are, we know when council tax has got to be set, we know when Christmas is, we know that and the other. It isn't just enough to say, oh, it will be roughly the same as last year. It isn't always, because take a case in point this year, full council in September was at the end of the year, whereas the previous year it was at the start of the year. Now, I got caught out, my own fault, but I worked on the premise it would be the same as the last year, and it was flipped. Now, there are those of us who work, and I'm not asking the council to bend over backwards, I'm just asking it to be reasonable, because when we do get towards the end of the timetable, those of us who do work need to start thinking carefully, because in busy offices, it is at a premium, and it's basically first come, first served, at least, and it also helps other members who don't have they can plan their lives too. That's all I'm asking the committee, the Cabinet, to consider for future years.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, there's no intention to exclude you from being consulted at all. I think many of us were under the impression that everybody had this. But certainly, what we've now done is to ask officers to always send a paper copy of the agenda to every councillor. I know that's a little bit of extra cost for the council, we'll try and save it somewhere else. That every member of the council gets a paper copy of the Cabinet agenda, so that, because the two actual decision-making bodies of the council are the Cabinet. I once said I'd resign if I didn't. Please. Are the Cabinet and the council. So we've made sure that every decision, because OSPs make recommendations, but ones that make decisions will actually go to every member, so they'll know. So people will have had this last week. But I did think you had the possible timetable earlier. You do make a very fair point about looking at a longer, and I'm quite happy to look at that in a longer term and talk to the office about it. Absolutely no problem at all. In relation to the time, we have put back times and times to try and get it so that members of the public can get here and so on and so forth. Some of the meetings have to be timed such that we can finish with it for a reasonable time, because none of us want to go back to the days when council meetings used to finish at 11 o'clock at night, because it's unreasonable. But equally, there are different working times for lots of different councillors. So some councillors may work a shift and work in the evening, and some councillors prefer mornings. Luckily, we don't have Warwickshire County Council's arrangements, where most meetings are held at 10 o'clock in the morning, and so nobody can go to work. But then again, when all that was set up, very few people at Warwickshire County Council actually ever had to go to work. We've tried to avoid that. We've tried to put them back further and further. But I think there's a limit to the time we can just keep moving them back. And the Cabinet was moved from 2 to 6, and we recognise that that is helpful for more people. So, fully take on board your points, Councillor. And in one particular meeting where there are now cell, where there is you, I and Councillor Jackson, only as councillors, we do make sure you can...
Yeah, right, I appreciate that.
Councillor Jackson.
I think the points made about timings of meetings have been discussed for years and years, and there are people's working commitments, but there are also equally important people's childcare commitments and their family commitments, and I think whatever time you come up with is not going to suit everybody for meetings. I think it's quite right that overview scrutiny members control the times of their meetings. It would be appropriate for Cabinet to enforce a time that the overview scrutiny will be happy with. I do think there is another issue, and that's about public transport actually, which in some areas in the borough is very, very sparse after 6 o'clock at night. So if we really want to encourage inclusivity, it is really, really difficult to hit on a time that's going to suit everybody. I think the suggestion of doing a couple of years' dates is a reasonable one and should be looked at.
Would we be agreed then to take that on board as part of the recommendation that we look at? And certainly we can do that before next year, so that we've got the ones for 2016-17. Okay. There are no other items that are being brought. Oh, sorry. I got rather distracted earlier on in the meeting, so there is. Thank you. Yes, there is. Proposals for new arrangements for funding services delivered by the third sector, where we have a need to respond to Warwickshire County Council by the 12th of February, so it can't go to the 18th of February council meeting. The date has been set by Warwickshire, not by us, and this did go to the Economic and Corporate Health and Scrutiny Panel, and Shirley's going to report on that.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, the Chair of the Scrutiny Panel couldn't be here this evening, so he asked me if I would take this for him. The members at the meeting on the 29th of January received a report from Rachel Jackson, and it was a survey from the County Council. She very patiently and painstakingly went through each and every question and asked members to submit both their decision on the question itself and then to add any comments.
And you'll see, Chair, that on page 85, those comments and so on are put before you. The OSP, as you alluded to earlier, isn't able to make decisions on behalf of the council, and as you say, because council is after the closing date, they were minded to send it here for your approval and submission to the county in time. So that's mostly what I'd like to say. The only other addition to that, if the chair was here himself, and he's sent me a little email just to say that he thought that the questions themselves from county were pretty ambiguous, and that caused problems. There's a marked lack of information of how the groups are to be merged, so not much to go on, and how they will be funded by the lead organisations and authorities. And he says there is no information of the impact on joint funders, such as ourselves, and how that will be addressed. So he just wanted to add that, Chair.
Thank you. Well, it is his birthday today, I understand, so I think we can forgive him not being here, perhaps, even though I had to spend mine at a delightful planning committee last year, but so I can understand that. Do we have any questions about that meeting?
I can only endorse what the OSP went through on that night. It's a cross-party group to look at things. You know, I have no qualms with the recommendations that they've put forward. I would also suggest that the views that have been mentioned tonight are added to the report that goes back to Warwickshire County Council.
Councillor Longden's note? Yes.
Yeah. It's added to it and we endorse it.
Chair, going into the ambiguous point, there is a question there about county councillor grant funding. I have declared in the county council I need to do that, but I think it half reads as if county councillors are going to get an extra £1,000. It is actually not given to them, it is for them to decide how grants are spent. I think I needed to say that because it almost looks as though I'm commenting upon a potential increase in something.
People have to apply for that grant, and then each individual area is decided on that way. Yeah.
It isn't a personal gain.
No. Are we happy with that going forward then? Thank you very much. Thank you. So, no other business? No? So,